I am going to dive in straight into the questions because you just have so much knowledge, a wealth of knowledge in the entrepreneurship world, business world, and I am beyond excited to pick your brain today. So my first question, you've had impressive career, scaling multiple companies and serving in a high-level revenue leadership roles. What inspired you to eventually transition from the entrepreneurship and co-founding a revenue chemist?
Yeah, I think for me, it was the real formative experience I had was early in my career when I was at Xerox. I was managing a dealer channel, and the dealer, which was our nation's largest, chose to give me 30 minutes notice that he was defecting to a competitor. And this left 50,000 customers in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest uncovered. And so I spent 3 years of my life putting that back together. And that was kind of my scaling experience, albeit under the $16 billion umbrella of Xerox. But I really got bit by the scaling bug where it was, infectious. The energy, the success, the complexity of figuring out the problem. And so I really enjoyed that experience. And so as I looked after Xerox and life after Xerox, I looked to put myself in positions like that where I could scale or grow a team and positively impact revenue.
Absolutely. Wow, that's impressive. I did not realize that. What happened to you? Well, that's a challenging pill to swallow, probably, right?
It was it was a fantastic opportunity. Really, as I said, got my creative juices flowing, and I learned that, it's a super complex problem to solve, but there are some similarities as you go from situation to situation that you can rely on. So there is, even though there might be some nuances, there's a pattern underneath that you can leverage.
I want to piggyback on what you just said about the creative bug. I always hear the term a lot of managers and leaders in the corporate world use, specifically with sales individuals. You got to treat this like your business, right? Can an entrepreneur who used to own a business go back to the sales role? Does that make sense what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it does. So I think, look, Sanjar, I think you can simulate the experience, but you can never truly replicate it. As a business owner, you have all of the pressures, of making the revenue number. Because if you don't make it, you don't pay yourself, right?
Yeah,
And as a business owner, whether it's right or wrong, a lot of times you're the last person in the business to get paid. So
absolutely.
versus, an individual contributor working in, say, an enterprise selling situation, you've got the foundation of the company behind you. And so, month in, month out, week in, week out, you're going to get paid your salary, regardless of whether you produce results or not. And in an entrepreneurial situation, if you don't produce, you don't get paid. There is, while there are some similarities, I think the biggest from a creative standpoint that you always want the individual contributor to be accountable, be responsible, take ownership for their territory like a business. That means be creative. If you know your business well enough to know that you're moving in the right direction, you've got the underlying activity metrics, the underlying pipeline, et cetera, to make your commitment or make your number. So, that's important versus, hey, I'm going to wait around until marketing or somebody else in the company comes forward and tells me, hey, here's how you make your number. So I think it's that accountability and ownership that we're striving to instill in the individual contributor.
Yeah, if for the viewers that are watching this, if they're basically outside of my intro, obviously you have a lot of credibility in this world, right? That comes down to entrepreneurship, owning a business. What do you specialize currently? What does Revenue Chemist specializes in right now?
Yeah, so we really do three things. We do fractional revenue leadership. So in a situation where maybe a sales leader or a marketing leader has left the company and they're in the hiring process, but they need somebody to kind of keep the sales team moving forward, achieving results, they'll bring in a fractional revenue leader like myself or my partner, Aaron. I think additionally, excuse me, that we also look at coaching and consulting. So coaching where maybe we have a first-time CEO or a first-time revenue leader, and they need a little help and support in, stepping into the position and stepping up to the position. And so, it's helpful to have somebody as a coach or a mentor who's been there and done that and can, advise or mentor or coach that CEO or that revenue leader forward. And then the final piece is consulting, where just like it sounds, hey, we've got a particular situation or issue. We'd like you to come in, analyze it, suggest a change. And then in some cases, we're actually taking that suggestion and implementing it through our fractional revenue leadership program.
If you have one advice to give to entrepreneurs, what that one advice be?
My business partner and I learned in the process of scaling companies, and he was a marketing leader. I was a sales leader. Together, we would manage the go-to-market process. And what we found was it was so complex. There were so many different moving parts. And as was easy when it was just the two of us and we could sit in a room and talk. But as the companies grew that we were working with, teams expanded. We were at one point where we had sales and marketing team of close to 50 people. And so, keeping that team aligned and focusing on the critical few priorities was really, really important, because I think as you pointed out, right, it's really easy as an individual contributor, as a business leader, to get distracted by the cool new software, or, hey, look at what AI is doing. Or, before you know it, you sit down at your desk and you look up and it's 6:30 at night and you can't remember what you've gotten done. And so, it's very easy to work in your business. It's more difficult to work on your business. And so what we found was we would sit down with our entire team and we would go through on a quarterly basis a goal setting process. And we would come up with generally 3 goals that we wanted to accomplish by the end of the quarter. And we would report out on those goals every single week, and in terms of how we were doing, what we had learned, what the new things we were going to try. And by doing that, we stayed focused on what was strategically important for the business, right? It eliminated or minimized those daily distractions that you get, because rather than saying, hey, I'm going to go check out this new AI software, I would go say, okay, these are 3 priorities. What am I doing to move these forward today, this week, et cetera? And so having that, I'll call it North Star, really, really helped us keep the team aligned, and quite frankly, led to our achievement of those quarterly objectives in a much stronger way than if we hadn't had such a rigor and process around it.
Let's talk about the transparency, right? You also stressed that the need for the full transparency and visibility into the sales funnel. How can entrepreneurs leverage data and metrics to make more informed decisions and avoid vanity metrics?
Sure. So let me share with you right now a tool that we use from time to time that helps us understand what's happening in the sales process. And so um, what this graph represents is, it's called a stage by stage conversion by rep. And so I'm happy to share this with your audience. But what we're doing is, through our CRM, we're understanding how many opportunities or deals did a rep work on? How many sales qualified leads did they get? How many of those made it to discovery, demonstration, proposal, and on through the sales process? And then we use this SQL number as our 100% and figure out the percentage conversion from SQL through the rest of the funnel. And then we can take and map that. And what this enables us to do is understand if we have a sales process problem versus a sales training problem. And so we can look at how tightly clustered or unclustered these lines are. And we can see we've got a group of about 5 or 6 reps up here that all seem to be very tight figured in terms of their conversion from one step in the sales process to the next. And then we can see we kind of have 2 outliers down here. This is an example of a sales training issue, because what we need to do is work on these 2 reps to help them improve their conversion and come back into the norm. If we flip over and look at the sales process issue, you can see all the reps are tightly aligned, and we've got a precipitous fall from our discovery to demonstration, right? We're
Wow.
losing half of our pipeline here. This tells us we have a sales process issue. And so now we've got to go back in and rip apart, really understand what are we doing at the discovery phase or not doing that is dramatically decreasing the number of people that want a demonstration. And so something's going on in this process or in this step or stage of the sales cycle, and we need to diagnose it, figure out what it is, and change it.
What metrics do you use? Is that every single company, every client of yours is has a different metrics of what a right standard conversion rate should be? Where do you get that data? Or there is a data out there that can be applicable to every company?
I would say there's generally not. You can kind of come into some, I'd say, roughly right metrics, right? Which is, look, if you're in the early stages of your sales process, you should be converting roughly 50%, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, of your prospects from like a sales qualified lead to discovery, and discovery to
Presentation.
demo. Once we get to demo into the later stages of the sales process, it's not uncommon to see the conversion percentages decrease. And so, in the late stages, maybe a 30 to 40% conversion. When we get to that last stage between that and closed one, best in class companies, so the world's best companies, are converting at 35, 45%.
That's high.
Normal,
That's
yeah, it's
high.
very high. It's very high. Normal, or maybe not normal, but non-unicorn type companies will convert anywhere from 15 to 25% in that closed one. So that gives you some basic metrics to look at, but I would encourage you work on improving your metrics. Don't get stuck on trying to benchmark with external companies or others, because the sales process, the buyers, etc., are radically different from one to another. So the real value here becomes improving your conversion at each step or stage. And that's what's going to lead to significant results versus trying to benchmark with a competitor or a like company.
As an AI focused entrepreneur, I'm just curious to hear, right, your perspective on the role of AI, in a revenue growth, in a sales enablement. How are you and your team at Revenue Chemist utilizing AI tools and technologies right now?
Yeah, I think there's a continuum there. So we use it for everything from, basic research, whether it's researching a prospect, researching an industry, those types of things. That's fairly well understood. And then as you climb up, we've also started experimenting with taking call recordings and having them either for an entire sales process with a single customer, or looking across all, for example, closed one deals to find out, okay, what are the things that are happening in closed one deals that don't happen or happen more frequently or less frequently than deals that we don't win. And so trying to really dig in and understand the selling process, the behaviors that the rep and the customer or prospect are demonstrating during the call, and how does that compare to a profile or framework. And then I think at the ultimate extreme, we are starting to see replacements of people, predominantly sales development reps, in the
Wow.
qualification process. So there's a number of examples, both with our clients and on larger clients as a whole, of using AI-based SDRs or sales development reps to field inbound inquiries. And we've even seen companies starting to use them in outbound as well. So I do think from that perspective that there will be some replacement or upskilling that needs to happen, where the SDR job is going to be, if done right, could be replaced by AI. But I think there's a fallacy in the market that says, oh, well, it's AI, I'm just going to flip it on and it'll work, right? That's
Yeah.
not the case. You need, just like you hiring a new sales development rep, you need to invest in the time and training for that AI agent. And it's just as time consuming as hiring or as onboarding a new employee. The difference is once it's done, then you can go in and do slight tweaks here and there, but otherwise it's pretty much done. So there is some advantage, but I think AI is going to continue to revolutionize the go-to-market process.
Last question. One advice you would share with aspiring entrepreneurs, aspiring future sales individuals who are just starting their journey, either in sales or owning a company or their legacy entrepreneurs. One advice.
I think it's be accountable to yourself. I think, to the conversation we were having earlier about being an entrepreneur and getting distracted and focusing on lots of little things that feel good because you check the box and yes, I got this done, but do they expand, grow, improve your company? Maybe not. And so, that's where it goes back to that quarterly goal setting and holding yourself accountable as an entrepreneur to say, look, as an example, I'm going to commit to doing 2 meetings a day where I'm moving prospects in my pipeline forward, right? And I'm going to do that. So I'm going to have 10 meetings in the week and I'm going to hold myself accountable. On Friday afternoon, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to spend 30 minutes looking back at the week and understanding, hey, here were the things I was trying to accomplish and how did I do against them? What do I need to improve next week to improve my ability to grow this business and provide for my family?
Absolutely. Carter, thank you so much. This has been incredibly impactful. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, where they can find you.
Sure. It's carter.perez@revenuechemists.com.
Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks so much, Sanjar.